we have any apologies for absence, Sally?
We have apologies from Stephen Harker, Matthew Ward, Mike Green and Rosendahl.
Very good. Moving straight on then, do we have any declarations of interest? Anything that's on the agenda?
Chair, Vice Chair of SDDC for the...
the non-pecuniary interest?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Alec. Any others? No? Okay. Minutes of the previous meeting, any errors, mistakes? Anybody spotted? No. People happy to agree with the minutes? Yeah. There's no matters arising, as far as I'm aware. No. No particular update from me, unless anybody's got any comments or questions for me. We'll move straight on. If it's okay with everybody, on item 5, just to stop everybody having to play musicals chairs, we'll just move that to the last item because that's a confidential item, if that's okay. So we'll just move at this moment on to item 6, the information governance policies.
Yeah,
I think we're giving that to you, Vicky.
It is, yes. Thank you very much, Chair. I'm presenting this paper on behalf of the Interim Monitoring Officer. In the interest of time, I don't intend to take everybody through all the policies individually. I will, however, open up for questions in a second, but it was just to highlight to Cabinet, please, that whilst we've asked Cabinet to review and approve the policies, it is each policy individually and not the suite of policies. So just to bear that in mind, thank you. Apart from that, in terms of the policies, has anybody got any questions?
I think that should be on, Alan. Should be okay.
I'll just point out to Cabinet that alongside the fraud and corruption policy, we will need to develop an anti-fraud and corruption strategy and action plan. And that would normally be developed and then taken through the Audit and Governance Committee. So if the policies agreed today, we will take that forward.
Just to add to that, all the policies that have been provided to Cabinet today have already gone through TVCA Audit and Governance Committee and they've already been reviewed and approved. Thank you.
Was that item 6 and 7 or just item 6?
They've been divided there.
Yeah.
It needs a reference, but should we
we'll just do one
ask Cabinet? Yes, please.
So, any comments or questions on item 6? People happy to agree the recommendations in item 6? Yeah, thank you. And then separately, item 7, is there anything you want to add to that, Vicky?
Just to add, please, again, it's a similar situation and there's 3 policies that all need to be reviewed and approved individually rather than a suite of policies. Again, they have been through TVCA Audit and Governance Committee. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't think that reflects Alan's comments. Any comments or questions on item 7? Happy to agree with the recommendations? Yes. Thank you. Moving swiftly on to item 8, South Tees Development Corporation loan agreements. I think we're going to start passing over to Chris's portfolio lead. Chris?
Yes, so as Cabinet aware, for the various workshops that we've done about this, this is the culmination of quite a long piece of work with Arm Clause to try and make sure that the debts and overarching liabilities are all covered, that there's a mechanism to pay, but also that there is a way to pay down the debt faster, should that be possible. I'll take a suite of public questions, I'll do them right at the end, but it's probably worth saying that this will have further points to it and then there will be further updates to Cabinet, but there will be a bit of a scheduling of debt which needs to happen to ensure that actually all liabilities are covered, that we're able to cover any key overpayments that are needed, but then also to do that surplus sweep at the end, which is a really, really important mechanism. I think Arm Clause presented part of this as well.
Stephen Kitching is available online for any questions.
I'll take any questions as they come and then I'll answer the public questions afterwards.
Okay, well, just before we take questions, Alan, did you want to add anything to the report?
Yeah, just my perspective, I think this is a very important agreement for the Cabinet to approve. This formalises the loan arrangements from a broadly informal process to puts them on a total formal footing. I think it provides assurance to Cabinet that the debt can be paid off within the timescale of the business rates retention agreement, with the only thing, the key loans based over a long period will continue but are funded through another mechanism. So this has been stress tested by Arlene Close, and I'm sure they'll be happy to answer any questions around their stress testing. We at STVCA Finance are of the view that the STDC income forecasts are prudent. They are based only on contractual committed occupancies at the moment. There is scope for more occupancy going forward, so I think there's a prudent basis for expecting and having a high degree of confidence that the loans can be paid off during the 19 years of the business rates retention. So I recommend this agreement.
Thank you, Alan. Alec, please.
Just based on the fact that repayments are scheduled on the existing tenants, Chris mentioned the ability to repay back faster. So for instance, say a future data centre came with a whole periphery of extra business rates, how often are we reviewing that sort of schedule of payments and whether we can draw down faster and get it paid off faster because less interest?
We will be reviewing it quarterly, reporting on it quarterly, and then having a formal annual review. But from a Treasury point of view, at any point in the year that STDC are of the view they have sufficient resources that they can pay off early, they can agree to make a payment at any point. It doesn't have to wait for a quarterly review.
Okay, so they would offer rather than us requesting, is that?
Within the agreement.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a really interesting point to the question there, Alec, in that from an STDC perspective, they would want to pay it back as quickly as possible.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
But the counter to that, arguably from TBCA, is that you want them to pay it back over the 19 years because then you maximise the interest from STDC back to TBCA. Now, there's other risks involved with that by paying it out that long. I'm not saying we should do that, but it's both sides of the coin on it.
Yeah.
But that's why I think in the agreement, so thanks to Alan and Chris and so many people that have been involved in getting this to this spot, is allowing within the loan agreement for a minimum repayment, but then a significant ability to overpay as well, rather than just standard terms of the same amount every single year, which would then in effect tie you into an annuity like 19-year loan.
I know we discussed in the sort of over the next 5 years, with if anything happened to an existing tenant, we're more than covered through the business rates from the government and things. When you say stress testing, is that? I mean, there's a lot of variables can happen over the next decade. How far does that stress testing go in terms of future-proofing, I suppose? I know that's not an easily answerable question.
Stephen, would you like to comment firstly from Arlene Close?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the work that we did was basically pushing the current proposals basically as far as they'd go within the amount of business rates that are retained. So we took, well, okay, what's the worst case scenario? Well, what's the worst case scenario where everything will still be repaid within the 19 years? And for us, you can basically permanently reduce your current expected business rates by about 15, well, just over 15%, so to about 84% of just over 84.6% of what you're currently forecasting, and that will still be fine. So that doesn't include any new stuff. That's just what's in the current MTFP that we were supplied with. So you can take quite a big reduction in your current contractual cash flows and still be pretty comfortable. We also looked at it. This isn't in the report, but we did model it in a previous iteration where we delayed the cash flows by about 2 years, and you were still able within the 19 years to be able to repay. So it's not, we can't pretend, oh well, if it went down to 10%, or you didn't get any, if there was an absolute disaster and you didn't get any business rates, that you could still repay it. Obviously you do still need the cash flows, but you can take quite a lot of delay and you can take quite a lot of reduction and still be able to repay within this sort of structure.
Great, thank you. Last one, Ben, if you don't mind. I just want to recognise this is a great piece of work. It really has, a lot of concerns I had answered them. Just in terms of government, have we had any noise on how this may impact, hopefully, the best value notice being removed sooner rather than later? Have we had any noise?
I don't think we know that, Alec, but I know they are aware of this meeting and are keen to see the outcome of this meeting, because obviously it answers a significant outstanding question from government around the finance of TDCA, right? So how that plays into the BBN, who knows, right? But it's a significant thing that they see as a sign of progress. What that means in practice, you know as well as I do, we don't really know. So.
Yeah, just on that, Alec, I've already spoken to the team in government about this, so I've shared the report and I've offered them a separate briefing with myself and Alan, potentially Chris, if they find that beneficial. So obviously they'll have the report, and if they need further information from us, that offers there.
Great news. Is this, are we going to put this out through the TVCA comms after this meeting?
Great.
Yeah, there's a, yes, there is a draft press release in circulation, I believe.
Cheers, thank you.
Thanks, Alec. Lisa?
And thanks, Chair. Would now be the right time for me to move an amendment to the recommendations?
Just unless anybody's got any other comments or questions they want to make, we'll come to that when we make the decision, if that's okay, Lisa. No? Okay, yeah, then
yeah.
now is the right time, Lisa.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and thanks to the team, and I reiterate what Alex said. So, and thank you for the team for sending out my amendment yesterday to members. So hopefully you'll have sight of that, because I don't want to read it and go through it all. But just, I want to be clear on this, that the amendment doesn't seek to change the principle of the loan arrangements that have been before us today, nor does it seek to delay the progress. And I can say I think there's been a huge amount of progress on this. Rather, it's intended to strengthen appropriate governance, transparency and cabinet oversight as these arrangements develop over time. So my proposed amendment to recommendation E is that whilst authority is delegated to officers, and rightly so, that any change extends the repayment period beyond that set out in this report, or results in a different financial impact on TVCA, which you've kindly went over there, Alan, it's presented back to Cabinet for approval. So that's the first one. This will ensure that any material changes to the assumptions on which you've mentioned remains a matter for elected members to consider and determine. The amendment to recommendation F, just to explain that, is similarly focused on transparency, recognises the need for officers to approve future loan advances within the already approved facility. It also provides that Cabinet will receive an update setting out the details and terms of each loan advance. Given the scale of the facility and the importance of these arrangements for the combined authority and our constituent authorities, I believe it is appropriate that Cabinet maintains visibility of how the facility is being managed and utilised, and how the associated risks are being managed. These amendments do not remove operational flexibility for officers, absolutely not. They simply provide additional assurance for Cabinet that we remain informed and retain the decision-making oversight when there are significant changes to the financial position or repayment arrangements. Therefore, ask colleagues, somebody to second this and to support the amendment.
Please second. Sure.
Yep, that's fine on it, absolutely. Anybody comments or questions on Lisa's amendment?
I think it's probably just worth pointing out that essentially the sweep mechanism, so if we were to acquire more payment from STDC, this wouldn't be captured by Lisa's amendment because that's already set out in the structure. So actually it won't slow down any overpayment process, it won't do anything like that. But it is right that Lisa's made the recommendations more explicit about oversight, which is good.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, so given we've got a proposer, sorry?
I'll do the public questions if that's okay.
Before we vote, just because there's a proposer, if that's okay. So given that we've moved the amendment, it's been seconded, we are voting on the recommendations within the report, but with Lisa's amendment, right? So we're voting on the amended terms, not the original within the report, okay? People happy to agree to Lisa's amendment? Yeah, happy with that. Okay, so there's no need to go back to the original report. That report's agreed. Over to you, Chris, you want to answer some questions.
So there are several. So the first one is about the repayments and the reduce and the facility around that. So what are the what are the safeguards to ensure that there's no deferrals or changes, and that's covered essentially in the repayment as set out. But we also need the schedule of debt, so essentially they need to cover off all interest related payments first, then they need to cover key payments with any key repayment fees which are incurred by underpayment in the key in year, and then goes over to the next year, and then after that the sweep mechanism kicks in. By doing it in that way, it means actually we will cover all debt if it was a case that they were not able to make the payments as set out, and we then have to come back to Cabinet. Second question, the intended mechanism is essentially what we're doing today, which seeks to try and recover almost all debt through the 19-year period, other than the ones set out, which have a slightly longer lifespan. The STDC BP question, the purpose of that payment, so that was part of a forward funding agreement. STDC were carrying out phased pieces of work, which was then repaid for by BP, and that is covered as part of this process as well, to reap those payments back to us. Cabinet is asked to approve the future loan facilities in the capital programme. Does this delegated authority apply only to STDC borrowing or any future TVCA borrowing facilities? It only applies to the loans outlined, and I think that needs to be really clear. One of the things that's also in the report, and I think Alex right to ask about the best value notice, this won't do it, but this is one of the steps on the way. As part of the recommendations in the improvement section, which I'm sure everyone read, there is a commitment to do an onward lending policy, which means that we will start to set out a structure and a framework of who we lend to, how we lend to them, and then how we repay them back, to ensure that in future this isn't the case again. But there will be further reports coming in September. I know that throughout these reports September keeps getting mentioned as a date. I just want to show my appreciation actually for Sarah, Tom and everyone really at TVCA, because there is a lot of work going on between now and September, where we are hoping we can get quite a significant movement on various reports. But this will only impact the current loans that we've got with STDC. The question about conflicts of interest in the section 73, this is partially managed because the boards that are making the decisions are politically led. Section 73 officer has delegations, and while they do have oversight over both boards, the two boards being separate is what gives it a bit of comfort. And then the last one is about the stress testing and the 84.6 scenario, and was it robust? Essentially, any repayments that Arlene Close works on, the tenancies or the income stream is either guaranteed or backed by further legal agreements, or it is a already pre-agreed income rate. So if we take the key, for example, the key payments that they are intended to make is only 25% of the operational income that they can make. So the hope is that everything will get up to a high level of operations efficiency, and then we are able to reap more back. And I think that's all of them. Thank you.
Okay, very good. We'll move on then to the next item, item 9. It's up to you, Sarah. Oh, by the way, Stephen, thank you for your help. You can drop off now, you don't have to listen to this. you can if you want, but you don't have to.
I get more boring.
Thanks, Chair. So it's a very detailed report, so I think I'll just confirm a bit of history on this and then confirm exactly what we're asking Cabinet to approve. So this report brings forward quite a comprehensive programme of support for businesses in the Tees Valley. It's fleshed out the detail. We agreed principles with Cabinet at a previous meeting, and this is very much the detailed delivery plan. And it also brings together a number of funding sources, so it's an £81.8 million programme of support for businesses to be delivered over the next 4 years. I'd like to emphasise how much of an opportunity this is, because we're not working with annual funding, so we're really trying to put in place a system of support for businesses. So I'll open for questions in a moment, but just to be very clear, we're asking Cabinet to approve the programme and the associated funding allocations. That will all be subject to a very comprehensive business case, which is almost complete. And through our existing assurance framework, approval, delegation to approve that business case sits with our statutory officers. However, we've also added in there, during this transition from existing assurance framework to single assurance framework, that actually that will be done in conjunction with 2 portfolio leads. Mayor Houchin as portfolio lead for the Emerging Investment Committee, and Mayor Cook portfolio lead for business growth. So that's just adding some additional oversight for Cabinet in the sign-off of the business case. We've also built in their agreement to develop an inter-authority agreement. The success of this system relies heavily on all of our organisations working together, and we all have a significant part to play. So we want to make sure that that's formalised in an agreement. Recommendation D is to agree delegation to myself as Director of Business Solutions to manage the programme within the framework that Cabinet agrees. But again, we've added some additional oversight for Cabinet through the 2 portfolio leads previously mentioned. And we're also agreeing to bring back a quarterly performance report to Cabinet, which will monitor our progress towards the objectives, but also make sure that any variance is approved through delegation and reported back on a quarterly basis. So happy to take any questions.
Any comments or questions? Chris?
Just because apparently I just love SLAs and loan agreements and inter-authority agreements. But that's a really important sort of mechanism, because actually there is a lot of really good people across the Tees Valley all working incredibly hard to encourage businesses, and some of them over time have built up certain specialisms. So if I think, and I'm going to quote Stockton here, so be prepared, but if I think about Stockton and the way that they approach the chemical sector, there's some real specialisms within that. So actually, if a new chemical industry was to come to Redcar, for example, it would be really useful if we were able to sort of pick those staff up and maybe temporarily give some of that knowledge and expertise over to Redcar if needed. And I think that would be quite a good mechanism to try and support all the local areas to grow in quite a good way. It's also a step on the journey again towards improving best value, because we are demonstrating that we are able to work better as a combined authority with all the local authorities playing their part in an overarching strategy.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Any other comments or questions? People happy to read the recommendations in item 9? Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you, Sarah. Item 10, Brownfield Housing Fund. Jonathan's not here. Are you picking that one, Sarah? Thank you. It's all right.
So this report seeks Cabinet approval to accept the new round of Brownfield housing funding, which is 33.3 million in total. That's 32.6 million of capital and £700,000 in revenue funding for us to be able to deliver the programme. This is the 4th allocation to Tees Valley, and the approvals are really principally about establishing the programme and the process for allocation. So this isn't about the individual projects at this stage, it is just asking Cabinet to approve the named programme, approve the development of a programme level business case which aligns with the single assurance framework, approve the process for identifying and assessing projects. And I think a point to note here, this is the 4th round of Brownfield housing funding, but actually it's the first time we've had an agreed strategic pipeline of housing projects. But to add to that, there will be an open call process for other organisations to put EOIs in if they have other projects that should be considered. So I think it's all in the report, but happy to answer any questions.
Just one, Sarah. If we were in Redcar, we have a bank land come online next year, say for instance through a land sale, we can then submit it then, can we?
Yes, so
there isn't a sort of cut-off date, is there?
No, so I think if there's sort of 2 separate parts here. This is a current allocation of Brownfield housing funding, and obviously we need to go with the live pipeline at that time, but the separate point is that we need to keep our pipeline constantly updated. So I think at that point, if something comes in, we need to then look at the available resources. But regardless of whether that's there at that point, we need to keep that pipeline ready, because we never know when more resources will come.
Okay.
The point is the pipeline is continuously updated. There is no closing date for that.
No.
But it's about the resources available
for this particular round of funding, yeah.
Does that answer your question, Alec?
Yeah.
Thank you, Sarah. Any other comments or questions?
I'm happy to endorse the recommendations in the report.
Okay. People happy to agree with the recommendations?
Yep.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Moving on to item 11, the delegated decisions. We can take those as noted unless anybody has any particular comments or questions on any of the TDs. No? Okay. Well, before we finish then, we'll jump back to item 5, governance and appointments item. We'll do this in a couple of parts, please, so if you don't mind, Alan. Thank you. You see there are a number of recommendations in the report, which we'll have to split out slightly. Thank you. So on, we'll not break them down entirely, but if you look at recommendation A is to appoint Alan as the new interim Section 73 officer. So if we can just take that recommendation as a standalone, are people happy to approve that? Has anybody got comments or questions? No? Chris?
Just like to place on record my thanks for Jo and the work that she's done up to now. I think it's just probably appropriate at this point.
Thank you, Chris. Okay, people happy to approve recommendation A? Yeah. Yeah, thank you. You want to stick your head out and come back in? Where's he gone? Probably thought it was going to take a bit longer. That's fine. So then if you look at the rest of the recommendations, if we can take all of the rest of the recommendations except for recommendation B, which are the appointments around the chair and the vice chairs of audit and governance, etc. Has anybody got any questions or comments on the recommendations except for item B? People happy to agree with those recommendations? Yeah. Okay. And then for item B, I'm informed that this is a confidential item, so we are going to have to move to exclude the public from this item. Can I have somebody to propose that, please? Graham, thank you. The seconder, Lisa, thank you. People happy to agree that? Yeah. Yeah. If we can do that, please. If you ask people to leave before we consider that recommendation.